الأردن صاحب الكثير من المبادرات التي أسهمت في حشد الدعم والعمل لصالح القانون الدولي الإنساني عالميا. واحد من أهم التصريحات التي أكدت عليها رئيسة اللجنة الدولية للصليب الأحمر في مقابلة خاصة أجرتها معها الزميلة غادة عمار. نترككم مع تفاصيلها.
نستضيف اليوم ماريانا سبولاريتش إيجر رئيسة اللجنة الدولية للصليب الأحمر، وذلك للحديث عن المبادرة العالمية للقانون الدولي الإنساني التي أطلقتها 6 دول مؤسسة من بينها الأردن. ونناقش كذلك اليوم التقرير العالمي ودلالاته في أزمات غزة والسودان وأوكرانيا كذلك. Ms. President, thank you for joining us today. We would like to start this talk by knowing more about the global initiative on IHL and what has been achieved so far.
Thank you for having me. The global initiative was founded by 6 countries. Jordan was one of the 6. And it's an exceptional measure, an exceptional process that we have launched together, responding to the fact that we see an increase in armed conflicts. We are classifying as the International Committee of the Red Cross today approximately 130 armed conflicts around the world, international and non-international armed conflicts. This is too many, and we have seen an escalation counting today twice as many as 15 years ago. So we have to find a way to de-escalate. And the respect for international humanitarian law is the key today to de-escalate armed violence. And we are happy to work with 90 states in the meantime on advancing this initiative towards an international meeting which will take place next year.
Yes. What do you see the impact of this global initiative, considering the escalation of crisis that we are witnessing, especially in our region, and we will be coming to talk about Gaza more in details?
What you see today is that conflicts are fought with high intensity, also because new technologies give states and non-state parties the means to amplify the force of violence. But this violence affects civilians first and foremost. You see the vast destruction that is happening in different situations of conflict. You see the high numbers of casualties and displacement, and you see immense human suffering. Much of this, if not most of this, could be avoided if the rules of war are better respected. The rules that were designed after the Second World War to prevent civilians from suffering unnecessary pain in war, to protect civilians, to ensure that they have access to hospitals, that they remain in a situation where they have access to water and to humanitarian assistance, which is not the case today in many of the conflict settings, as we could see in Gaza, as we can see in Sudan, as we can see elsewhere.
Yes. According to the states that are committing to this law and also to the initiative, how can we provide adherence and commitment, whether it's on implementation level, humanitarian level, when it comes not only to the initiative, but we need an implementing arm usually. Is there a vision towards that when it comes to implementation on the ground, especially to providing more support to implementing the law and committing to it?
The Geneva Conventions, adopted in 1949 and which entered into force in 1950, are today ratified by all states. It's the primary responsibility of states to comply what is written and defined in the Geneva Conventions. Now, the legal obligation is clear, but what we need to align is how these rules are being interpreted. So we have launched this initiative to forge an alignment about how the protective measures need to be applied in order to become effective. What states need to do in very practical terms in order to be compliant with what they had agreed on decades ago. It means training your armed forces. It means ensuring command and control. It means adjusting military strategies. It means implementing legislation into national laws and institutions. It means budgeting for international humanitarian law implementation, and it means making this implementation a national political priority. You will not see any legal system being effective if the leaders of the system are not committed to respecting it.
Yes, and how would you describe the responsiveness towards this initiative, especially when we talk about making this, like you described, a national political priority?
The responsiveness is overwhelming. It comes from the majority of states. 130 states from across the globe have participated over the last months in consultations within 7 work streams on 7 different areas pertaining to the rules of war. These consultations showed that the majority of states want a more protective interpretation of international humanitarian law to make sure that if they find themselves in a situation of armed violence, that their civilians will be better protected, that access of their civilians to health, water, sanitation, and food will be better ensured. So we have an alignment that has been written down. 27 states are co-leading this exercise with us, in addition to the 6 founding members, of which one is Jordan.
Yes.
And today we are issuing preliminary findings here in Geneva that will then pave the way for a second round of consultations until next summer, during which we will finalize very concrete recommendations for states on how to better respect international humanitarian law in any given context. We are not talking about specific conflicts. We are talking about states' obligations to respect the law.
Yes. As you've mentioned, Jordan is among the 6 founding states of the initiative itself. What does that represent in terms of global humanitarian leadership, and how do you see Jordan's role contributing to advancing IHL in regards of awareness and implementation as well in the region?
Jordan has been for decades a steadfast advocate for the respect for international humanitarian law and notably for the Geneva Conventions. We have a long-standing cooperation between the ICRC and Jordan, the Jordan Defense, the Jordan Foreign Ministry, and all relevant national institutions. We value Jordan's support also for our work, not only in the Middle East, but beyond the region. Jordan, together with Brazil, China, France, Kazakhstan, South Africa, launched this initiative to advance respect for international humanitarian law, but also to ensure that we heighten the level of political attention to the issue that is at stake at the moment, that is the primary key and possibility for states to de-escalate current conflicts, which are overwhelming us. You see that the conduct of the operation very recently in Gaza, the release of hostages and the release of detainees, is paving the way towards a ceasefire. And this is exactly what the initiative aims at, to use these first humanitarian steps to end fighting and to enter into negotiations for a longest-lasting agreement that will increase peace and stability, not only in the region, but across the globe.
Yes. With the same relevant context, you are issuing the global report. What are the key highlights that this report is holding?
The highlights are an alignment of states that we have to take this issue seriously, that this is not an abstract set of norms that pertains to the work of legal experts in a foreign ministry. These are very practical measures that states need to take very seriously and implement because it's improving the safety and security of their own people. This is about saving lives. This is about protecting lives. This is about protecting human dignity. when it becomes very difficult to do so, yet the obligation remains clear. We cannot be dismissive about the norms at the time when the number of armed conflicts hasn't been higher for many decades. We count so many conflicts today, very cruel, barbaric conflicts, that we have to say we live in a decade of war. Now, we can be complacent about it and say there's nothing we can do. Or we can say, no, this is the moment where we have to reverse the tide, where we as state leaders are responsible to do that, where we are responsible to stem the constant escalation of violence. We have to stop the killing. It is in our power.
Yes, as you mentioned, this is not related to a specific conflict in particular, but zooming in a little bit to our region, we cannot help but to talk about Gaza, the situation, and in particular the humanitarian situation in general. So if we want to describe what's going on so far before the ceasefire and now what will be unfolding according to the recent events.
My key message has been the ceasefire has to hold. There's no return without this becoming a return to utmost horror for the civilians involved. There has been enough suffering, that there has been unmeasurable suffering over the last 2 years in Israel, in Gaza, but also elsewhere. It has to stop. No matter what, we will continue working with the parties. We will continue calling on the constructive approach, on the constructive will to find solutions so that we can finalize the implementation of the current agreement and ensure that there's a pathway towards a lasting solution. We count on state leaders who have an influence on the situation to hear us, that there cannot be a return to violence. We need to heal. We need to find possibility to recover and to reconstruct what has been destroyed.
And just to give a closer example to what you have already explained and described towards the initiative and also what we're getting out of the report, how can the global initiative help, for example, ensure continued respect for IHL and protection of civilians in such sensitive conflict? Now, the conflict has ended in Gaza so far, and we're looking for the ceasefire, but the respect is still required so that we don't go back into the same cycle.
Look, the law is only effective if there's political will to implement it. Everything you need towards a lasting ceasefire and a political solution in Gaza starts with what is written in the Geneva Conventions. Trust me, it's very practical and it's doable. We have been proving over and over again that it is doable if the parties are willing to engage. As for the ICRC, we cannot put human life on a scale. For us, a human life is a human life. The same rules apply to everyone. The same rights apply to everyone. And this is the guarantee that we have to create space for parties to engage constructively over something that is very difficult to overcome. You need neutral intermediaries that remind you that humanity applies to everyone if you want to ensure safety and security for your people. So what we have as a basis for this initiative's success is the commonality of rules that everybody finds necessary to provide security and safety for their own people. And we have the simultaneous approach addressing all states at the same time to respect the same rules in our common interest, and to do this in a non-transactional way. You have to respect the law no matter what the other side does. And if you have influence on your parties that are working with you, if you have influence on your friends, if you have influence on friendly states, use this influence to convince each and every state leader that only if we adjust our politics and tactics to agreeing that there is a minimum of humanity that we always have to preserve at all times, we will be able to de-escalate and we will be able to come back to a more peaceful situation also in the Middle East. But it requires will, it requires leadership, and it requires recognition that this is the more effective way towards peace than returning to arms and armed violence. And it applies to all. It applies to state and non-state actors. They both carry obligations towards their people. They both carry obligations towards the ones they want to serve and the ones they want to follow them. But the ones following them need protections, they need rights, and they have the same rights and protections under the Geneva Conventions.
Indeed, we hope the world would listen to this message, and we look forward to the implementation of the global initiative and also the impact of it internationally. Thank you so much, President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mariana Spolerich-Egger. Thank you so much for joining us today.
بهذا نصل إلى ختام العاشرة. إلى اللقاء.